Welcome, everyone. I am thrilled you're here today for a conversation that's about something that can transform your business, having the right number two leader. I'm Alec Broadfoot, CEO of Vision Spark, where we help entrepreneurial companies find and hire the right number two leaders so that can scale their business and create more impact. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, like everything depends on you, this conversation is for you. The right number two leader is a game changer for all small to mid-sized companies. This is the fourth in a series. We'll explore the impact of a strong number two leader. And to kick things off, I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Ken Williams of the Black Swan Group. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Alec. I appreciate the invite. It's good to be here.
Tell us about the Black Swan Group.
Sure. So Black Swan Group was started by Chris Voss, and Chris and his son Brandon grew Black Swan Group. We are a company that helps ambitious entrepreneurs take ownership of their lives and their futures through negotiation. Chris is a retired lead FBI hostage negotiator. Wrote a book that sold over 5 million copies worldwide called Never Split the Difference. And so we work with, like I said, we work with ambitious entrepreneurs. We work with companies. We do one-on-one coaching, live events, all kinds of ways to learn, all around negotiation.
I love the book, Never Split the Difference. And what I loved about it was some really good business strategies. But, Chris shared some good stories in there too about dealing with some bad people, right? And some of the tricks of the trade that he did to successfully negotiate those things. And I guess that's the reason that birthed the company in helping your clients negotiate better.
Yeah, Chris, what's amazing about Chris is he defines having lifelong learning. And so everything he learned in the FBI, everything he learned in their training, he brought and continues to bring. He brought to Never Split the Difference, and he continues to grow it. He Never Split the Difference 2016. It's been 9 years, and he continues to evolve negotiation skills based on what he learns. So it's not like he wrote the book and then forgot about it. So the stories, he told me a great story about he went to Scotland Yard for some training. And very appropriate for this conversation, it was about leadership. And so we were having a conversation about our operations, and I wanted to be involved in depth in a conversation. And he said, I prefer that you not be. And I was very curious as to, okay, why? And so he took a step back and he told me about this training at Scotland Yard and, about the ability to be objective. And sometimes when you're deeply involved with the conversation, you lose that ability to be objective. And so Chris brings not his experience with the FBI, his learnings, and Never Split the Difference, and then to everyday trainings, and then to our company.
Yeah, that's great, and that's it, and it's true. I mean, I love buying cars. Like I've bought several cars over the years, and I'll drive them for a couple of years, and I'll get a new one. I usually buy used and get a deal, and I will if there's a car that I really want, I will have trouble getting the price I want on it. But I also, because I buy a lot of cars, I help friends and family and single moms buy cars. And so I'll actually negotiate on their behalf. And when I can negotiate on their behalf, I get great deals because I'm not emotionally involved. And so that's so true. That's so true. Now tell us about your clients. Are they private companies, government, big, small? Tell us about your clients.
It really runs the gamut. We have CEOs that understand that they're negotiating every day. There's a saying that we have that anybody says, I want or I need, the negotiation has started. And so we have CEOs that, they have one-on-one coaching with our instructional cadre because they understand negotiation is a perishable skill. And so they're doing it every day. They want practice. And so we have that. We have larger corporations that'll come in and they'll bring us in to meet with their sales team, their purchasing team, human resources, across the board. They have we have, I don't want to say kind of like everyday people. So anybody in their lives that has to deal with something, it could be parents, grandparents that have a difficult situation, they'll come to Never Split the Difference, or they'll take our online courses and learn to talk with people in their lives. We just did a summit, a negotiation mastery summit in Louisville. And the first day, Chris gave everybody a challenge. First 15 minutes gave everybody a challenge. And the next day, we surveyed the crowd with the challenge. And there was a gentleman who stood up and said, I haven't talked to my daughter in 4 years.
Mm.
And based on this challenge and what we were told to do, I'm now talking to my daughter again.
Wow.
So whether it be the CEOs or people dealing with challenges every day,
Yeah.
which is really what one of the things that gets me up in the morning.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. What what are some of your maybe one or two things in the training that you've learned that you use on a consistent basis?
Uh, I'll share the first thing that hit me that I learned was the concept of asking questions. And I won't go too deep, but in my previous positions, now, there's an HR component. And so what I would have team members that would come to me and they might say, well, there's all these things, very ambiguous, very vague. And my protocol before would be to say, okay, well, you said all these things. What are they? List them for me. And what happens is that puts people on the defensive. So now they have to defend what they say. Well, the reality is I'm really just curious. I mean, I need to know, but I'm curious. And so we have a skill called a mirror. And if I repeat what they said, the last 3 to 5 words, and I want to be clear, I'm not a coach.
Mhm.
So I'm parroting what I have learned. You repeat the last 3 to 5 words. And so I would say, all these things. And generally, that's not going to put them in a defensive position. That's going to encourage them to clarify and give me more. That was the first thing. And the second thing I learned, and this is the process about being self-aware, is we have 3 negotiator conflict personality types. I always forget the word conflict. Assertives, accommodators, and analysts. And one of the things accommodators are famous for doing is giving what we call counterfeit yeses.
Mm.
So let's say in my position, Chris comes to me and says, hey, Ken, I've got this project. Here's my vision. Go ahead and make it happen. And okay, great, Chris, I got it. No problem. Well, that's my default reaction. And what I've learned is that I say that too quickly. And what I need to do is stop, think about, and articulate anywhere between the next 3 to 5 steps.
Mm.
And when I can articulate the next 3 to 5 steps, that does 2 things. First thing it does, it gives Chris confidence that I understand the goal and he has a vision of what I'm going to do next. The other thing it does is it gives me the ability to take immediate action with the team. So those are the first 2 things that I have learned.
Yeah, that's great. Now, you are the general manager of Black Swan Group. That's your title, but you're the number 2, right?
Um, yes and no, depends
Okay.
upon the operation. So our operation is split. We're an EOS platform. We have the leadership team. And so being very black and white, the operation is split into 2 divisions. You have the content and instructional division.
Mhm.
Those are the brilliant retired law enforcement men and women that create the content and deliver the content. That's headed by Derek Gaunt. Wrote a book called Ego, Authority, Failure. So for you aspiring leaders out there, please, Ego, Authority, Failure is a great book. The other side is operations. And in that, I'm a little bit humble to say this. I mean, technically I'm number 2, but our operations leader, Chelsea Wyatt, we work hand in hand. But from an EOS standpoint, general manager, integrator, Chris will usually come to one of the 3 of us. But when there's a tie break or something else, it's usually me and Derek trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So you're the integrator then.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah. And how long have you guys been running on EOS as a company?
That is a good question.
Hmm.
Well, I'd say that so our EOS implementer is Jonathan Smith, and he's been with EOS for over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, his involvement with Chris and Brandon predates our involvement with EOS. So Jonathan has been working with Chris for a while. I think probably it goes back to about 2017 or 18.
Okay. Yeah, very good. And how many direct reports do you have?
I don't often think about that, so I'm gonna have to do the math. Um, right now it's five, and it's that many because we don't have somebody as our biz dev leader seat, and so I'm the de facto on that.
Mhm.
So we have two business development representatives that report to me.
Okay.
So anywhere between, I would
Yeah.
say, 3 to 6 as
Yeah.
the company grows.
So, in a high level sense, what are your responsibilities then as the integrator number two on the operations side?
Day to day,
Mm.
making sure that the operations are running smoothly.
Yeah.
And that could be anywhere. Some days marketing gets more of my attention. Some days sales gets more of my attention. But every day I wake up and I think about, I sort of do a roll call in my head of the different parts of the operation, and I'll prioritize from there. The other side of that is being Chris's, uh, this sounds very arrogant, but being Chris's go-to when he wants to make something happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's either be a sounding board or a catch-all. Uh, Derek and Chelsea also serve that role, but a lot of the bigger projects and projects that cover operations, um,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very high level of what I do. But like right before this, we try and keep a weekly, well, we have a weekly scorecard.
Mm-hmm.
And so right before this, I was looking at our newsletter subscriber rates. We've got an L10 meeting on Wednesday that I report our scorecard to. And so it could be something as granular as open rates and unsubscribes and wanting to understand uh,
Mm-hmm.
really what's happening in the business.
Yeah. Now we were reminiscing a little bit before the call, and oh, by the way, those of you that are listening, if you do have questions for Ken or me, feel free to ask those questions in the Q&A portion of the Zoom here. So yeah, so Ken, we were reminiscing before the call, and we were talking about the process that you went through, and I think you had over 5 different points of vetting in our process, and then you were definitely interviewed by Chris and the team, and so you were in the top 1% of candidates. When I'm curious, when did you realize that you were suited for this role?
I'll let you know when that happens. Um, when did I realize I was suited? I think there's a couple different phases to that. First is being self-aware and recognizing is the type of company you want to go work for.
Mhm.
Uh, and so the dynamics of the organization, I've always worked for entrepreneurial companies. So checkbox. Small, another box checked. Focused on growth. Fantastic. Those were the first three things. Uh, when did I realize I was a good fit? Within the operation, everybody's going to be different in how they feel.
Mhm.
It wasn't until about 8 months into the role where we had a quarterly EOS meeting and I had some rocks. So those of you not familiar with the EOS, I had some quarterly projects that I brought to the leadership team in completion. And there was some affirmation that like, okay, so I felt like I had an impact.
Mhm.
And I think that for me, a fit means, do I have an impact?
Mm,
Like, I can get along with the team. That's, that's fine. We can kibitz and talk, whatever. Uh, but I really didn't feel like I belonged until I had an impact. And
mm.
that took 7 or 8 months.
Interesting. Um, as we've interviewed thousands of candidates, I would probably say that 2 or 3% of the population have the ingredients to make a great integrator or a great number two. Um, and um, there are a lot of people who've gone through their career trying to be the number two, or they've had other managerial positions. And when we vet them, we take them through our assessment tool, the talent impact profile, used to be called the Achiever, or our leadership study interview. We realize that there's many candidates that probably should not be in managerial positions. They probably are not suited for that. So you obviously are in the top 2%, and you're making a big difference in your company. Tell the audience like a little bit of your background of maybe some other positions that prepared you to be the integrator for this company.
Um, yeah, I hope everybody has a cup of coffee at the ready. It might be a little boring. So I started my career as a golf course architect.
Hmm.
And what's the correlation between what I do now and the golf course architect? Number one would be project management, understanding how you take something from nothing to completion and fruition. And I use those skills almost every day. Number two would be cross-functional teams. We worked with engineers, we worked with financiers, we worked all over the board to bring golf courses to reality. Communication. When I was 26 or 7, I was communicating with projects in Europe and as far east as Russia. Well, paying attention to tone, how something is said, the slang that you use, how do you communicate? From there, I went to work for a place near and dear to me, a place called Catawba Island Club here in Ohio. And I was their director of golf and marketing. And in that capacity, I learned marketing and I learned finance. I
Hmm.
learned profit and loss sheets and budgets and those things, and how to understand numbers and retail profit margins. So I did that from 2009 to 2017. And then with the same organization, I grew into be their chief operating officer, working hand in hand with our CFO and CEO. And there I learned sort of larger scale management. I learned how to manage different different personality types. Golf is an early morning sport, so most of the people that I worked with were early morning people. Food and beverage, not nearly as much. That tends to be more of a PM type of person. Uh, and so I learned sort of larger organization. I learned deeper into capital planning, uh, accounting. I got deeper into the accounting side of things rather than just writing budgets. So all of those were sort of building blocks to this position where I may be reviewing right now. Chris and I are in the midst of reviewing a contract for a project in the UK. And so, everything from the format of the date can be different. Uh, so those are the things that prepared me for what I'm doing now. And one of the common threads through those is I'm a big fan of variety.
Hmm.
And so in being an integrator for a small company, this could be a bad word. Especially in our organization, we don't like the word multitasking. But there's an inherent multitasking that happens with this position. You just have to learn how to manage it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and we have found that the best integrators that we've placed for our clients don't necessarily have that industry background. So like your company does negotiation training. You didn't really have negotiation training as part of your career, right? And we've had clients who, you know, maybe they're in they're a SaaS company, software as a service, but the integrator that we place may have come from manufacturing background. So oftentimes it's a different industry background, and but we realize that we call them the seven non-negotiables. So every great integrator that we place has to have these seven non-negotiables, despite not having that industry background. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think to that situation, one of the things that's often underrated is curiosity
Mm,
and the ability to learn.
yeah.
And so when I look at, this comes from Chris, he's a lifelong learner. And we don't have a book club in our organization. It's not really that defined. There's sort of an inherent core value
Hmm.
of learning. And that's one of the things that's helped me in my career is being naturally curious. When I was doing golf course design, I was probably 22. And I was in a meeting and somebody used the term equity relative to a private club. It seems silly now. I didn't know what they meant.
Mm.
And I got, after the meeting, I started thinking about it and I asked Arthur Hills, who I was working for, I said, what did they mean? So that prompted me to go back to school and get my MBA. I wanted to know.
Mm.
And so it's just a natural curiosity and passion for learning that I think is really important for anybody who's looking to lead and is looking, even to change their industry.
Mhm.
That ability is hard to put that on a resume, but it's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. And just being a learner, being resourceful are
Mhm.
really good traits, right?
Great
So
word.
let's talk a little about Chris Voss as the visionary. What are his main responsibilities as a visionary?
As a visionary, he drives the business. Uh, he is he is not short of ideas. And in fact, that's one of the first things he said to me during our interview process. He goes, I don't need new ideas. I've got plenty of ideas. I need people who can implement them.
Mhm.
And so he not only drives the business, when it comes down to it, in a lot of ways, we're a content company. We're an educational company.
Mhm.
And so he and Derek are the driving forces behind the evolution of the Black Swan methodology and the Black Swan skills. And so those are his two primary is growing the business. Um, and it's no secret, he is the celebrity, in so a lot of ways, he's also the product,
Mhm.
which is interesting when you think about a CEO and you think about the CEO is also the product.
Mhm.
So driving a business, content creation, and then making sure that uh, through me, not that doesn't mean that I'm the hinge point. It's just I'm a communication tool through me that the business is going in the direction where he wants it to go.
Yeah. So what would you say Chris's superpower is? What is his unique ability?
He has he is an outlier when it comes to understanding people.
Mhm.
He, with our skills, it's a lot of it is understanding the underlying motivations, the unspoken motivations. And I've never met anybody who understands people better than he does.
Mhm.
One of my favorite conversations repeatedly with him is when we are strategizing about a problem. It could be a person, it could be a deal. And he starts talking about uh, sort of behaviors
Mhm.
and how we can address them. Um, that would be his superpower.
Mhm.
There's he's so good at other things too. I mean, avid reader. Like I said, we don't have a book club, but if this is also for any aspiring number two leaders, if your CEO is reading a book and they bring it up to you, read the book.
Mhm.
Um, so he's an avid reader. He's brilliant at applying what he learns.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you ensure that Chris stays in a superpower?
Mm.
Or is Chris really good about staying in a superpower?
He's, I mean, Chris is really good, and I'm in this with doing what he wants to do. So what does that look like? What do I do that can contribute to him staying within what he wants to be doing? I'll share a hard lesson learned. When I first came to the company, I got some bad advice.
Mm.
I was advised that I should shield the business from Chris so that he could keep doing his superpower. And that was a mistake because what that ignored was that it's his business. He needs and wants to understand what's happening on a day-to-day basis. So what I learned was to be able to give him information in a format that he can quickly digest so that he can either go, okay, cool, I don't need to worry about that, or I needed more information.
Hmm.
So what I do, and I'm still learning, is communicate the business to him in a digestible way.
Hmm.
And if he's comfortable that we're going in the right direction, then he can focus on what he's good at.
So, I met Chris once or twice, and he seems to be like a no nonsense type of leader. Uh, he's just very good at what he does and what he did for the FBI, right? So, how do you guys stay aligned?
Aligned.
Yeah.
So, as cliche as this might sound, communication.
Hmm.
Okay, fine. But, but it's got to be a certain style of communication. So we operate on it with an acronym RACI, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed.
Hmm.
So let's say I just need to give him information. Well, any leader who gets information from a direct report is going to ask themselves, what do I need to do with this? Right? That takes time, that takes mental energy. So anytime I don't need something from him, I put RAC in lowercase and I is capitalized. So
Mm.
whatever he's about to read, I'm just informing him.
Hmm.
The first thing. The second is we are a very literal company, and this is driven by Chris. If you use a word that doesn't match the definition in the dictionary, not a good idea. It's literal. So when I'm in a conversation with Chris and he's got questions, I have to listen very, very, very closely to the question he's asked and answer that question because he's not asking one question, he's asking a sequence.
Hmm.
And if I don't answer that question, then it goes sideways.
Hmm.
And this is something that it's probably one of the hardest things to learn when you come to work for us.
Hmm.
So understanding how to communicate with Chris is probably how we stay aligned.
Hmm.
And that also goes back to, as you're probably getting, it's not an easy answer. It also goes back to uh, when he asked for a project to be completed, being able to articulate how it's going to get done, or at least the first 3 to 5 steps. That then gives him the confidence that we're aligned.
Hmm. And then, are there times where you have to push back on, Chris, where, he may have a great idea and you're like, well, it is a great idea, but we can't do this right now. Or does that happen?
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often.
Mhm.
Uh, Typically, this could be a polarizing statement. The concept of being gainfully employed and fully employed. I'm a big believer in prioritizing time.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm also very, very cognizant of how fast our economy is moving with different things. And
Mhm.
so it's very rare that I will tell Chris, look, we don't have the bandwidth for this right now. More often than not, it's articulating what needs to get done and then why it might get delayed.
Mhm.
Uh, and Chris he will not often say, I want this done and I want this done by this time.
Mhm.
He doesn't really give us calendars. It's more of like, I want to implement this. Okay. We're implementing, we have a show called we have a network on a platform called Fireside called the Black Swan Network.
Mhm.
And 2 Fridays ago, he reached out to me. He really liked a certain style of show. He said, I want to implement this. Okay. So we put the pieces in place and it's going to launch in about a month. And I articulated to him, we've got the people and the pieces in place. And this is when we're going to launch, which is in a month. And he didn't come back and say, well, I wanted it next week.
Mhm.
Um, so that's how we, uh, there is a cheat code, if you will, that we use very, very, very sparingly, which is, I'd be happy to do this. What do you want me to stop doing?
Mhm.
And that's a gentle way of saying we're busy. Is this a super priority? And then what does this take priority over?
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah, and I know really, good integrators will push back on their visionaries by asking questions. Like so. Yeah, this is a great idea. Now we're beginning to implement this other project that you had us begin.
Yeah.
So we only have a certain amount of resources. Which one is priority, right? So it's asking those questions. So now. Your company, are you all virtual or do you have some people in the office?
So we are virtual first. We do have a small team in Vegas where Chris lives
Hmm.
that we've been growing. Chris does like meeting in person. And so we're growing a team around him in Las Vegas. But other than that, we are completely remote. I'm here in Ohio. Director of operations is in Virginia. Director of coaching is in Atlanta. We have coaches in Virginia, Las Vegas, Texas, and Washington State, all over.
Yeah,
China.
China. Wow. So you are all over. So I'm sure you mentioned time management is important to you. You probably have to be really clear as to when the meeting is and what time zone you're in, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's we have the first thing that we do with onboarding is the calendar.
Hmm.
We do live and breathe by the calendar. Chris has one person that focuses solely on his calendar. We don't really believe in a lot of meetings, but calendar is very important. Yeah, and especially with uh, some of our coaches, they do one-on-one coaching, which is virtual, and they may have clients international. They
Hmm.
also travel for corporate trainings, and so we have to respect travel time and all those types of things. So we have a logistics team that for the coaches, they will focus a lot on calendar management.
Yeah, very good. So what in your time at Black Swan Group, which has been a little over 2 years now, what has been your biggest mistake?
The biggest mistake was taking the advice of trying to protect Chris from information. that was a massive mistake. That took, it almost made my career here very, very, very short. Uh, I'm very happy that I've been able to recover from it and gain back Chris's trust. The biggest mistake other than that, probably uh, probably using the word compromise.
Mm.
Uh, it's sort of similar to never split the difference.
Yeah, right.
Uh, I use the word compromise in a legal conversation, and I think it was early on as well. And I think that sort of made Chris doubt, like, did I hire the right guy? Like, did he not read the book? Uh, you know, I, it's tough. I don't know if there's been a biggest mistake.
Mhm.
There have been a whole ton of small mistakes, and I make mistakes every week.
Mhm.
I think it's especially it is tough sometimes with communicating with remote work. I think one of the biggest frustrations that the team probably has with me is sort of the sharing. This is ironic, the sharing of information and everybody being aware of what's going on. And sometimes in my position, information comes in, information goes out where it really needs to go.
Mhm.
And so information might go to the R or the A in the acronym, the responsible or accountable. And I didn't inform the team. Uh, and I've had some teammates come to me and say very recently, like, how can we be informed about this?
Mm.
I'm like, cool. Thank you for coming to me. And we put some things in place to help them be informed. And for me, I've put some check systems in place that other people can hold me accountable for making sure information is disseminated.
Mhm.
That's probably the most common mistake that I made, is
Mhm.
the sharing of information.
And what would you say your biggest success has been?
I think it depends upon, operationally, I don't know if one outweighs another. I think the, I gave Chris a financial scorecard early, and he said, thank you. This is the first time in years that I've seen this clarity. And so being able to be able to understand our company's data
Mhm.
and communicate that information makes our decisions better across the board. And that is something that I think is a big success. And so I'm very happy about that. I'm very proud right now of our marketing team. Um, Chris is very focused on marketing, and I'll say this, our marketing team right now is having a lot of fun,
Mm.
and they're having wins and successes. And that's something that was very intentional. So I met with the marketing team. Psychological safety is a big thing, I think, in a lot of workplaces.
Yeah.
And I met with the marketing team 5 or 6 months ago. And I had heard this from the US gymnastics team, a famous press conference. One of the reporters asked one of the gymnasts, what's your team slogan? And I apologize, this is going to be a little off color, but it was FAFO, F around and find out.
Mm.
And I went to the marketing team, and people are afraid to make mistakes. And marketing is one of those things that it changes so fast that you really need to be fearless in what you try.
Mhm.
Because if fear is your primary factor, you're going to miss it.
Mhm.
And so I told the team, I said, look, this is our new slogan. In our Slack channel, we changed it to FAFO. And they're having fun now, and it's having an impact in the organization. Um, any success, go back to, if I can impact the organization in a positive way, and if I can help make the operations, any part of the operations, whether it be sales, whether it be marketing, better, that's a success.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. How often do you and Chris meet? Do you have a scheduled weekly meeting, or is it informally?
We um, we have a bi-weekly same page, myself and our operations manager, that gets rescheduled a lot because we're busy.
Mhm.
A lot of our coordination collaboration is via text.
Mhm.
And there's probably some communications experts out there that are cringing right now. But the reality for us is if I send a text that he doesn't understand, he's going to pick up the phone. And so it's more about pace,
Mhm.
timeliness, than it is having a set agenda. If something is too long to put in a text, then I put it in an email. And then I send him a text and said, hey, I put this in an email.
Mhm.
Uh, he operates generally, if it's not on his calendar, it's not going to get done, which we really try hard to respect, but sometimes timeliness.
Mhm.
So that's a text.
Yeah.
And then we have our L10s, where if it's a company-wide thing, we put things in IDS and we'll discuss it then and there.
Yeah. And then you have your quarterly sessions, right? And does Chris attend those?
Yeah, he does. And
Mhm.
in fact, we did our uh, the first 2 day I attended, he enjoyed it so much, he made a change to the rhythm where we actually have 2 2 days in the year
Hmm.
that are opposite of each other. So we have 2 1 days and 2 2 days because he
That's great.
really
Yeah.
getting team and brainstorming ideas and talking through things.
Yeah. That's great. I've not heard of that, and that's it. We do cherish our 2 day annual, and that's a great idea. So when there are people listening that don't yet have someone like you in their company, they're in many seats. They may be in the visionary seat and the marketing seat and sales seat, and I wasn't even in finance seat. What would you tell visionaries that don't yet have a number two, an integrator like yourself?
I think the benefits are hard to enumerate. It's finding it's finding the right person that fits what you need, whether it be a sounding board, whether it be someone to do the things that you don't want to do, because the unique attributes of visionaries are different.
Mhm.
And so really finding someone who, uh, like I said earlier, who's going to free up those little pestering thoughts or those pestering tasks. And I don't want to minimize the impact, I don't want to minimize the impact a number two can have because there's a lot more that I do on a daily basis. But having somebody who you can really lean on and trust to
Mhm.
drive your business forward. The other thing that I think is a unique attribute, and Alec, you do such an amazing job with the process. I've never gone through a recruitment process like you had, and it was, not only was it thorough, but it made me a better person, better professional because it made me more self-aware, which probably doesn't get articulated that much.
Mhm.
Um, it's not every number two is the same,
Mhm.
and not every number two is the right person for the right business, or the right person for each business. And so it's really being self-aware. Where do you need help, and where can you find someone you can trust?
Mhm.
Um, that's what I would say.
Yeah, and that's so key is having someone that you can trust, and there are visionaries that have maybe they've hired someone on their team in a different role to be their integrator number two, and they don't fully trust them, and so they may be more control, right? They may be holding on to things, not delegating things. And so they have to ask themselves, do they have the right person? If why they're not letting go, why they're maybe managing more than they should, is it because they don't have the right person? Um,
Yeah. The other thing that I think is really important for anybody that's going to take that seat, and I think it's a good conversation for a visionary to have, I see a lot of trust lost when a number two is too invested in their vision.
Hmm.
So used to have saying at Catawba Island Club, brilliant leader, Jim Stouffer, has done so much for that facility. The harbor master and I used to have saying, like, if he wants to paint the marina pink, it says marina, we'll paint it pink. And Chris asked me this conversation when he was interviewing me. He goes, if you and I disagree, what do we do? And I gave him this long answer about communication. I want to make sure I articulated what he's like, whoa, stop. He gives me one of these. You and I have talked about this, whatever it is, and we disagree. What are we going to do? Chris, it's your company. And it's very difficult, I think, for people who coming into this seat to let go of their ego,
Hmm.
and respect that at the end of the day, it's the visionary that has to make payroll. It's their company.
Hmm.
And so I think that's part of the trust equation in the conversations. I think that's important.
Yeah. So good. That's really good. Really good. Now, your company, you have core values. Or is that the RACI, your core values, or is that more of a norm?
RACI is more of a norm. It's more of a project or system,
Hmm.
project management or system that we
Okay.
incorporate.
Yeah. And then do you have core values outside of that?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. You're gonna test me on them. Yeah, pursuit of excellence is one of them.
Hmm.
Have fun is another one. Team, team is a big one. And that actually comes a lot from the hostage negotiation law enforcement world. There's a lot of people don't realize behind every hostage negotiator is a team of people.
Hmm.
Uh, and so Chris is very, very focused on team. Uh, having difficult conversation or ambition, excuse me, ambition is another one. We work with ambitious people. We need to be ambitious as well. And there are two more that are unfortunately are escaping me right now. But
No
we have
worries.
six.
Yeah. Just we had six core values, and I had a hard time remembering what the six were. We had actually had like sub values, and so we went through. I decided it was too much, and so I narrowed our core values down into three, and I can remember all three, and everyone remembers all three. And so our core values are grow, people, serve, GPS. So we grow, we get people, and we serve. And it serves as our GPS in terms of where we go as a company and the clients we serve, who we hire. And I'm not the only company that thought of GPS as core values. I've learned of at least one other more. But ours are specific to us. And
And,
yeah,
and they, having those core values probably helps you with company decisions.
all day. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, making sure we have the right people in the right seats and who our A players are. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. Um, and any questions from our audience, feel free to ask here. We're gonna move to one or two more questions, and then we'll end the conversation here. So, um, Ken, I'm just curious, what are you excited about as the number two in the company? What are some things that you're doing that you're really excited about?
We continue to restructure how we bring this content to people.
Mm.
Um, like I mentioned, we did a summit back in a month ago in March and bringing people together. We haven't done an event that large. First time. We're going to continue to grow that. We're going to be in Dallas next year. We've launched a series of self-paced online courses where people can go through and learn. I'm excited about the number of ways we're bringing content to people and being creative in how we do that. We just launched with masterclass. We just launched a product. I should say they launched, we helped, a product called On Call,
Hmm.
which is a brilliant vision by them, which is bringing more people. That's what I loved. I love growth and change.
Mm.
Those are the things that I'm excited about. There is a new book coming out. Derek Gaunt, along with Jonathan Smith, have authored a book that's supposed to be launched in this fall. In fact, I have a meeting this afternoon with the publisher. So that's coming out. Uh, Very excited about it. And yeah. And our growth international. We continue. We've got, when we host shows, we'll get people that'll call in from Australia, Far East. It's fantastic. And so we continue to look at ways to bring specifically live content, in-person content internationally.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and internationally, what countries have you guys done work in? All, Europe and Asia, Africa?
I know we've had coaching clients from Africa. I don't think we've done an in-person there. We've done coaching in Australia. Like I said, we've got a coach in China who just came on board about a year ago, and she's getting her feet underneath her. Chris has done a good amount of work in the Middle East, in Dubai. We're looking at, it's not, don't, anybody listening from the UK, one, I would be shocked if you are, for me, but we're looking at two deals in Europe, one in the UK and then one in Northern Europe. Chris has done work in Germany, all over.
Yeah,
So,
that's great. Yeah, it's so interesting how, the world is becoming flatter from a business sense. And I was in DC at the US conference speaking, and this woman came up from Asia, and it was just an honor. Like, she came specifically for my workshop and asked me to sign her book, sign the book that that I wrote about hiring the right number two leader, and I was humbled. I was really humbled that that this person knew of me and knew what we did, and was excited to come to my workshop. So um,
having an impact.
yeah, listeners, how can they learn more about the Black Swan Group?
Easiest way is go to blackswangroupLTD.com. If you're not following Chris on all the social platforms, he is constantly doing, teaching and stuff through those platforms. And that would be this would be two ways that I would recommend. Negotiation Mastery is our YouTube channel. Tons of content on that. Those would be the ways that I would go about it. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, I don't know if this is really bad protocol. I'm here to help anybody and everybody. It's Ken at blackswanltd.com is my email address. Happy to be a resource for anybody.
And the book Never Split the Difference. If you've not read that book, I highly recommend it. It's not only entertaining, it's also very valuable. So there's some great nuggets in there, and some things that we can do every day to improve our conversations, big or small, for negotiation. So, and if you are listening today and you're not sure if you need a right number two leader, or you have someone in place that is not cutting it and you want to transform your team, you can reach out to me at discover@vision-spark.com. So I want to thank everybody for listening today. Ken, thank you so much for your time and the wisdom you shared and your success, and really wish you the best with your leadership at Black Swan Group. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you.
You're welcome. Can I give you a plug?
Sure.
Would you be opposed to me giving you a plug?
Sure. Plug away.
Right? Anybody out there who's looking for a number two, sincerely, going through the process with Vision Spark, in many ways actually prepped me for the position. It was, like I said before, it was made me self-aware, made me evaluate my sort of core values as a leader, process. Each part was different, and so whether it was the assessments or whether it was the interview, really allowed me to be self-reflective, which then helped propel me into the process. So kudos to you, Alec, for aligning your people for a fantastic process.
Well, thank you, Ken. I really appreciate it. And we love what we do and how we create value. And, just seeing how you're making a difference in Black Swan is gives us, it's like a shot in the arm for us, and so my team we just love making difference in entrepreneurial companies. So, well, thank you, everyone. Ken, thanks again. And stay tuned. We have some more number 2 leader series coming up. So, all right.